I just think right now, women, especially in business, this is the year of women. I just know that.
Life begins at 150 grand a year. Life gets better at 250 and life gets real good at 500. Nobody can tell me differently on it.
When you start teaching something, I feel like that's when you start to master the actual art of it.
You and I, when we publish a book, we can go toe to toe with any of the New York trade publishers, any of the big time authors. We get to compete in that marketplace and then let the market decide whether our stuff is good.
People forget sometimes as an entrepreneur, the whole damn point of entrepreneurship is to make money.
And now here is The Win with your hostess, serial entrepreneur, marketeer, and chief sexy boss, Heather Havenwood.
Are you over 45, 60? Are you relying on the traditional medical field to help you feel great and get you back to a balanced body? Good luck with that. At e2lab.com, Dr. Don Salio got sick of people complaining about bloating, inflammation, and feeling sluggish. He has created unique, potent, and powerful non-pharmaceutical supplements to help the body rebalance, detox, and get back to being healthy. Go to e2lab.com, getting you back to healthy and balanced. Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Win with Heather Havenwood. And look, here's the deal, guys. What I do here is I bring you some really awesome people that are out there in the world, US and around the world, that are actually up to some really awesome things. Now, sometimes people, I agree with what they're doing. Sometimes I don't agree with them, whatever it is. But the point of The Win is to have you be open-minded and listen to other entrepreneurs are out there doing a really amazing thing. So this is a person that I was interviewed first on his show and we had a great time. And so, of course, I invited him over, right? And
Yeah,
right, of course. And so I want to introduce you to Tayo. Tayo, you there?
yeah, Tyler is right here.
Tayo is right here. I love look, how many times people told you your name rocks?
It does. I mean, literally, it says Tyler Rockson, so it goes on.
It rocks. I'd love to say that mine's better, sexy boss, but yours is better. There you go.
No, yours is. I love yours as well. I mean, I'm just, I think the name you gave yourself is pretty cool. I was just given this name, so I don't have the honor of saying I created a cool name. Right. You did.
Oh,
so.
thank you. No, I appreciate that. But that I heard of recently some people are calling their people like River and West. I'm not sure if I like that. North and West calling people's names. Let's not go there. Okay, so everyone, this is Tayo Rockson. I'm going to go ahead and go into who he is. He is a diversity and inclusion strategist. All right. So his work has been recognized in forums and many other publications. In addition to that, internationally recognized speaker who's presented at the United Nations Foundations and the World Bank. Hopefully they didn't take all your money. And in that spare time, he's a host of As Told by Nomads, which is the #1 cross-cultural podcast in the world. Bam! And rocked #2 business podcast by entrepreneur. Wow. So who did you pay off to get those? Because that's cool.
No, I didn't. I mean, it was funny when I made that entrepreneur list. I was going to bed and someone had sent me a Facebook message saying congratulations, and I was like, I didn't enter anything. And then they said, no, seriously, congratulations. Here's the link. You got something. So I don't know. I didn't. It was just an honor and and a humbling experience just to be recognized for anything. So
no, I get that. I was just recognized by Writer on Huffington Post as the top 50 women to watch in 2017. Now, what that did for me was, oh my God, I got to do something.
Congrats. That was good.
Thank
Good for you.
Thank you. I didn't know about that either. But someone's like, hey, check this out. But in my world, I'm like, because the top 50 women entrepreneurs to watch in 2017, and I think to myself, well, people are watching me now. Now I got to do something.
Well, the good thing is you're already doing something. You do a lot of things.
I already am. But it does put you up there like, wow, I must keep that. Or it kind of puts that little pressure on yourself, So here people calling you going, hey, check you out. You're like, whoa, I must be doing something. Now I got to do more of it. That's the entrepreneur in you. Okay, so you have a website called TayoRockson.com. I'm going to spell that out for people. TayoRockson.com. So you go there, you check it out. So what do you do? Like, you got a great face. You're a pretty stud. But what do you do other than that? Look good.
So what do I do? So I right now, a lot of what I do is I work with corporations and organizations and help them incorporate inclusive strategies into the bottom line. My background is I'm a Nigerian and I grew up as the son of a diplomat. So inherently, I was always a walking contradiction. I was the minority everywhere I went, So growing up like that, I sort of started developing in me this need to connect to people because I was constantly moving and I was like, how am I going to fit into these new environments? So I started building those skills as as young as 10 years old. And the older I got, it became interestingly and ineffective for me to actually see how the world was increasingly globalized and digitalized, yet people weren't acting global and digital. So I was so frustrated by that. And I started interviewing people. I started interviewing people and said, wait, why can't we fix this bridge? What is it that we can do to teach people how to do such a thing? And, it turned into a podcast and then turned into a very popular podcast that led to more speaking engagements. And then that sort of led me to consulting, and people started asking me, hey, we're hiring, but we don't know how to retain young and diverse talent. Hey, we're going to new market. How do we get, our team ready for these cultural nuances? Or, hey, we have a lot of unconscious bias here. What are things that we can do to work on in ourselves so that we can make sure we don't let that impact any of our decisions? So, it became a lot of that. And then I built a business out of, helping people how to connect.
Mainly helping companies is what I hear, helping companies specifically.
Well, companies and schools. I was just at a middle school conference, and they, it's a lot of schools need that as well because it starts very, very young.
So can I say that what you do is you help companies and schools retain Cupcake Nation?
I don't know about what is Cupcake Nation.
The Millennials. That's what I call it.
That is what you call
Cupcake Nation. Yes.
Okay.
Now you hate me. Click. Yeah.
What is Cupcake Nation anyway?
Cupcake Generation. They're a Cupcake Nation. They're like, poor me. I want to cry and hold hands. So yeah, it's not something I gave them. It's actually somebody else, and then I took it on. It's called the Cupcake Nation.
Okay, all right. Okay, fine.
Okay, quiet. Exactly. I'm interviewing you. You sit down. No, I'm kidding.
Yes,
giving you a hard time. I'm giving you a hard time. But yes, you do know that I'm like, it's the Millennials. They're whitey. But I get it. I mean, look, I do get it because look, I'm in a small business. Everyone around me in my small business here locally in Austin, they're Millennials, right? So I'm constantly in this conversation going, I don't get how y'all think. That makes zero sense to me, And they're like, well, so I get it. It's definitely, I mean, I only have like three employees that there. I can't imagine an entire organization. They have to completely shift on how they do things. So I have a question for you because I just saw this big interview and I can't remember who it was. I'm super apologetic. It was a guy and he did this whole thing about Millennials. And he said one thing that I was like, I don't agree with that. Okay, so I want to ask you if you agree with this quote kind of, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember the exact quote, okay? But what he was saying was that the Millennials in general come from a generation that they weren't taught certain things, okay? Whatever that was, and he went down this list. And then he said it's the responsibility now of the companies to teach them that. I don't agree with that. I call that bad parenting. What do you think? Now, I don't remember the list, right?
First of all, the guy that you're talking about is Simon Sinek. And I remember, they said a lot of things that I agree with and a lot of things that, and I'm a huge Simon Sinek fan. I do think, I know I'm sensing that you disagree. I think
it's okay.
Companies need to change the way they approach leadership. I think a lot of the models, and I go into a lot of companies, people have outdated models of leadership. And the reality of the world today is that we have different styles of leadership. When they were leading, there wasn't digital media the way it is today. So people need to know how to work with more mobile workforces. People need to know how to deal with people with different styles. And if you really want to succeed in the 21st century, whether you like it or not as a leader, you're going to have to learn how to adapt to that. And that does fall on the company. But I also think there's an onus on us as millennials to actually do the work to bridge that gap too. Because yes, some of the people that are hiring us are not, they're not of the same generation, so they don't think the way we do. And some of the things might be confusing to them. So fixing that educational gap is something that we should work on and, basically saying, hey, this is why I think this way. But I understand that you may think from a different point of view. So let's come to a compromise, so you say. So I think it goes both ways. I wouldn't go as blanket and say like it's the responsibility of the company. But I also know for a fact after that video came out, a lot of companies took offense to that. They're saying like, wait, what do you mean? But at the end of the day, a company is about the people. So if you're hiring a bunch of millennials, you got to make sure the environment is inclusive for them. It's not like you're hiring baby boomers and Gen Xers at this point.
Yeah, so a couple things. So first of all, there's a couple things with the statement that I can't agree with, that companies, it's their role to create leadership and to train their employees in their particular culture. But what I don't part agree with that, and look, we're having a debate here. It's all about fun.
Yeah.
Is that I don't agree with that the company has to alter to appease the millennials. It's like, no, millennials appease to the company, right? So there's got to be a give and take a little bit there, right? Because what I hear, and look, my generation never got this much focus. We're Generation X. We didn't get all this crazy, oh, we're different, we're unique. Please, companies, you got to change who you are for me. No. We were taught this is how it goes. You need to step up, right? So it's a very different generation. That's where I call the Cupcake Nation. Okay, so that's my own thing. But I wonder if there's got to be a give and take around that. And I'm curious what you teach, educate, in your speaking to companies. Do you tell them you've got to change for them? Or do you say, hey, how can we create a structure that's good for both of us? I'm just curious what your teachings are. None of that.
Well, I'm a lot like Simon Sinek, but this is a thing I would disagree with before I go into that.
Okay. Be the boss of your life. You're listening to The Win with Heather Havenwood. Are you a business owner that has a website but not tech savvy? Do you feel like a hostage to your web guy? The better question is, do you have a money funnel so people come to your page and give you money while you sleep? No? Then go watch free video at heathermakesyoumoney.com. Imagine having a money site, not a website, for your self-published book, e-commerce products, local practitioners like chiropractors or lawyers. Get a money site, not a website. Go watch free video at heathermakesyoumoney.com. Be the boss of your life. You're listening to The Win with Heather Havenwood.
We live in such a digitalized time right now that to say that companies don't have to adapt to change, they will be dinosaurs.
Not adapt to change, adapt to one generation. Very different.
Yeah, but they are the largest generation in the workforce right now. And they're the ones that people are hiring to replace. So if you want to fill a workforce with a lot of these people from this generation, 1980 and above, I mean, I don't know how you would not have to adapt if you want.
But there's a difference between, I think there's just a wording here. There's a difference between changing with the times of what's happening in today's world, and that things are altering and companies do have to change. But the thing that I think rubs for businesses is we have to alter for just this generation because they're special. It's like, look, times are changing. No matter what generation, things alter, right? Things are changing, things are upgrading, things are altering. No matter what, things are just moving. That's just with the times of life. But I think the part that's the rub, and I hear this from other business owners, is like, they're so special. It's like, no, it's just the timing. You know what I mean? We're all special and we're all different. And it's just a particular new generation, right? It's just, that's why, right? And look, I have cousins and I have half brother and half sister, and all millennials, and I totally give them hell about this. Okay. So you're not the only one. Welcome to the group.
Trust me. Look, I'm used to.
Yeah.
But I don't. But this is the thing. I don't know that you really think it's just millennials that get this treatment. You don't think every generation, the previous generation, never felt this about?
No. Because Generation X never got conversations or had consultants to come out and go, well, let me tell you how to deal with the Generation X. That didn't exist. If I was a Generation X consultant back, the 90s, they'd be like, we don't care. This is how we do things. They need to step up, So there wasn't that. Now, Generation X, just to know, and I know this, it's the smallest generation. I was born in 1975. So, I was created by a baby boomer, but the baby boomers had most of their kids for the millennials, and that's why they're resurgent. So the baby boomers had you guys, right? So they had the millennials, so that's why there's so many of them. So I understand that. But I grew up, right? So the 80s, I grew up with things like Atari. Don't even know what that is,
Yeah, I know what that is. Yeah.
So it's different. And I think the millennials are really, give them credit, they're the first generation that is in the workforce in our global history that grew up with technology. Now, I had it a little, but I didn't have my first computer until like 85 or 89. You know what I mean? I had dial-up in 93. Woo woo! Right. So for my first email in 92, 93. So I think that they're really the first generation to be in the workforce that was grown up with technology.
Yeah, no, and so to answer your question, because you're right about some a lot of some of this. I love the fact that we always have a debate.
We do. It's fun.
We always have a debate. Okay, so when I go into companies, a lot of the question they have is how can we manage this workforce? Because
good question.
this is the most diverse generation, right? So with the millennials, it's not just the work habits; it's the fact that a lot of them are mixed. A lot of them they're Mexicans, they're Black, they're Africans, there are all these mixes in there, and some people don't know how to deal with a lot of this diversity that's in there, which is a funny thing to say in today's world, but it's still such a reality. And the way that a lot of these people grew up in is they grew up with so many different cultural backgrounds. So to put like one blanket type of company culture sometimes is a little tough for some people to just adopt to. And on the millennial side, we did grow up with technology, so it's a lot of instant gratification. And what I always talk to you about millennials is the fact that we as a generation need to adapt to patience. We need to learn how to be patient. Because to your point about Gen X and baby boomers, there's that element of still the work that you do, takes time, and you don't just get something when you say you want it. Well, a lot of what I hear that I always disagree with, is that one person goes to one extreme and says, millennials are entitled, lazy, and all that. And then on the other generation is, we're not going to adapt to your needs. You're going to have to do what you say. At that point, there's no compromise. Because then what's going to happen is just going to be like, oh, you think we're lazy anyway, or you think we're a cupcake generation.
I just love that because it pokes you guys. Like, I'm not cupcake. It's like,
And then on the other hand, the millennials are going to be like, the boss doesn't even want to know what I want to do. He doesn't want to include me in the decision. And I just think at the core of what we're trying to do as a generation is to feel like we are making our voices being heard and we're making an impact. So even if the policies that I always recommend, or even if it's the bottom line, is they just want to know that something that they did made an impact up the chain. It doesn't have to be like,
okay, great. So love that. I'm not gonna fight you in this one or debate you. Okay, so I agree with you. There is something with this particular generation that's about that making an impact.
Yeah.
Thing, right. Okay. And that's new. Right. I think that's a new thing. So my question to you is why? I was around when they were growing up. I don't remember. What is that? Did they watch too much of Friends or something? Like, what was that? Like, what was the, like, they all grew up together with, like, we gotta make an impact. Was there a book they read in high school that, like, I missed? But what was that? Because did they watch too much Oprah? Like, I don't know. What was that? That they have this thing that this common denominator crosses the generation. What is that?
So you're saying in your generation, you didn't have, like, a sense of purpose? You didn't want to, like,
we wanted to make money. Money. We were wanting to make money and have a life and have kids and retire and all that, right? You got to remember in our generation, and remember, you don't know, but in our generation, I'm on the other side of baby boomers. I'm like the generation after baby boomers, so-ish. Right, we're in this weird space, and we grew up in the 70s and 80s, and the 80s was all about fun and drugs, right? So there you go. But 90s, it was this phenomenon of like old school. I remember, look, I used to date this guy. No kidding. I swear to God, this is 1995. Dating a guy, we're engaged. We moved to Houston together. I knew he was in the oil business, of course, right? I knew that, and he was going to work for a big oil company. I call him. He gives me this phone number. This is my work number, honey. I call the number. Swear to God, and they're like, "Hi, this so-and-so's office." And I'm like, "Yeah, can I talk to him?" I'm like, "Why is she answering?" "Oh, that's my secretary." I go, "You did not just call her your secretary." And I go, "Do you have a computer?" He's like, "No, I tell her what to do. She types in the computer." I'm like, "What is this, like 1950?" So things hadn't really changed yet. He didn't have an email address. This was like a huge oil company. I could say it, y'all know it. And these guys didn't have emails because the secretary, they called them secretaries. No kidding. All the guys were in the office in the white. I mean, seriously, it was still like that. This is 1995. So it wasn't like that long ago. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, so I still grew up a little bit in that. And that's part of the challenge, right?
Okay.
I was told I had to fit into that, not change that. Yeah, that's kind of what happened.
Okay, so this is it. So
really my question: why do y'all have the purpose? I think it's great. I'm not dissing it, by the way. I'm just questioning why.
If you grow up in a generation where the digital platform makes the world flat, and now you can know what's happening in China at the click of a button, and just like you can know what's happening in Nigeria, and you have such a generation where everybody is different and looks mixed in a diversity, there was this idea of finding your place. Now, if you're trying to find your place in such a world that's already defined what success looks like, what it looks like, a blonde, blue-eyed person for a particular career or a brunette for this type of person, people are trying to find their identity. And in the process of trying to find identity in all these places, sometimes you come across the idea that there is real discrimination. There's this real place that doesn't have a platform for your voice. And out of that need to express yourself, you have a bunch of people saying, well, I want to be able to express myself, and I don't like that someone told me that I can't be that because I don't look this way. And that's just what it is. We're a generation looking to find our place and find our voices in a world that hasn't necessarily made it easy for people like us to fit in. And, you look at traditional media, it's not like it's always looked it's not like it's always looked like the world.
Be the boss of your life. You're listening to The Win with Heather Havenwood. Have you wanted to stop swapping your time for money? Ever wanted to leverage your expertise by selling your knowledge to hundreds of people? I call that smart. And now you can easily and effortlessly, without a web guy, create memberships, online courses, coaching programs. Go to heatherhavenwood.com/thinkific. Start making money off what you know today. Go to heatherhavenwood.com/thinkific. Be the boss of your life. You're listening to The Win with Heather Havenwood.
And then you have people come up with now this news that just run it on a Facebook platform, or you have people do their own silos because they're like, well, I'm just going to create my own thing because no one's covered my story. And I was just at a conference this is middle school, by the way, so this is Gen Z. And this 13-year-old girl emailed me, and she went to my website and she said, I signed up to your website because I, like you, had a conflict of identity. I had an identity crisis. I'm a Peruvian girl mixed with Colombian parents. And, this world is really scary for me because in my school, I don't have any hero that looks like me. The government is telling me I can't do this. I'm worried about Black Lives Matter. I'm worried about Planned Parenthood. I'm worried about all. This is a 13-year-old. I'm like, how do you know all these things? But it's that she started that young, and she's saying, I'm constantly looking for a way to find my voice and find that way that I can make an impact. And it's just out of a need to feel appreciated, to feel like you're okay and you matter. And out of that, you create your own platform. And a bunch of people just gravitate towards that, like, oh, yes, that looks like me too. I'm going to go there. And no one talks about that. And that's the generation that we live in. I know to you might not agree, but to a lot of us, we don't see ourselves in a lot of these success stories. So we'll just create our own and create a following after that.
Yeah, no, I'm open to listening. I'm always open to learning. It's interesting. I mean, it really is a question I've always had because I've heard it before. We really want to make a difference. I've heard it. That's important to us more than money.
Yeah.
I've heard that. I've heard these statements and through either, it could be at Facebook or could be whatever comments, whatnot. But at first there's a piece of like, okay, I don't understand, but okay. All right. I don't understand. Well, then why? What is that? Where did that come from? Because even you talking, there was a huge diversity where I grew up. And I don't remember having a conversation with someone who was really different going, do you have an identity crisis? When they're 14, they'd be like, no, I live here. Yeah. You know what I mean? So you make it sound like there's all of a sudden this diversity. There's always, for me, my world's always been a lot of diversity.
Okay. There's always been diversity, but has there always been inclusion?
What does inclusion look like to you? I don't know. I mean, it's an honest question, by the way. I don't know what that looks like.
Inclusion is basically leveraging these diversities into a more effective way. So the world is different. Everybody knows millions of people move from one part of the world to another part of the world for various reasons. But inclusion means, are you safe enough to be yourself in this environment? In the workplace, it plays itself like, if you act this way, do you become stereotyped negatively and say, oh, you're just like all these people, Black person or Hispanic person, so I'm not going to hire you. It plays itself into unconscious bias when it comes to hiring decisions. Mm-hmm. It plays its role in casting in movies when you have people that are being casted, for Egyptian movies that are white people or Asian, just all these Asian movies that have all these different roles. People are like, wait, that's not how I remember it. Or I just saw Hidden Figures. It's an amazing movie about, 3 African-American women. Yeah, that was not taught in school, Heather. But that's my point.
That's true. I do say that. Point. I agree.
All inclusion, like you get fed all these stories at a young age, and you're like, oh, only heroes, and then you start to find out, like, wait, this happened at the same time that, that's just the reality. And our generation, we're very curious, we're very conscious, and we'll do the history and we'll read. So when we read all these things, because the internet now makes it easy for you to access all this information, and you start to ask yourself this question: wait, this happened. No one talked about it. I'm going to talk about it. That's just what it is.
Yeah. No, I get that. I mean, I definitely watched that movie, and I definitely thought, I was never taught that. Yeah, that's really interesting. I appreciate you sharing. In the world of leadership, so when you're in front of either organization or a school, and I do want to ask you about the United Foundation that you're part of. I really want to go there. When you're in front of organizations, schools, or companies, and you talk about leadership, coming from a perspective of your generation, what do you talk about exactly? And what do you mean by the old model as different? Because here's my pushback on that. I want to say this one thing to let you go, is that I feel, for me, human beings haven't changed that much. We haven't. Why we cry, why we're upset, why we hurt, why we buy. The human being behavior hasn't altered much. Our awareness has altered. We've created more awareness, and our technology has altered completely. But the desires we have as human beings, sad, cry, happy, passionate, hopefulness, all these things haven't really altered. We're still human beings. So in the world of leadership, what do you mean by that? It's changed. The old model doesn't work.
When I'm saying the old model doesn't work, if you look at Silicon Valley, it shouldn't make any sense why, over 70% of the leadership looks like white males. That's not a representation of the current demographic. And that's not because there's a certain lack of talent with other dynamics. I mean, that's not how the world is. And what happens is people make the mistake of thinking if we both start at the ground level area, I'm Hispanic, you're black, and someone is white, that means that we're all on equal footing. But that's not the case, because the further up you go, the food chain, it thins down. So why is there that thinning down? That's what I mean by old model. It's not an accurate representation. America itself is going to be a majority minority country in the next 5 to 10 years, where you have Hispanics just as many white people and different demographics. So if the companies don't look like that, there's something wrong. Mm-hmm. And that's something that we have to fix. And that's an uncomfortable.
I think that will fix over time. I mean, the millennials are still.
It should fix now. Well, it shouldn't be over time. It shouldn't be disproportionate. You can't tell me.
Hold on. That's that now mentality. It takes time to move the leadership because they've been there longer than you guys.
Well, Heather, that's not the now mentality, because this is not we're talking about Silicon Valley here. We're talking about recent technologies. We're talking about people 20s, 30s, 40s. We're not talking about 50, 60-year-olds. We're talking about the fact that there is still a system in place that makes it favorable. I know you don't like hearing this. We've had this discussion. But there's still a system in place that a lot of people are not comfortable admitting doesn't proportionally affects equal, different demographics. And those are grassroots things that we need to start addressing from the early age.
A couple things. I don't know why you disagree. I do agree on some level. I mean, look at the female leadership. Tell me top women. So here's how now this is my view, right? It's like before they get to ethnic, let's just go women on the planet. Okay. So women, just in general, we've been here for a while too. So it's like, when do we get our time? And so a lot of that has to do, I don't know the percentage, but I've heard that the percentage between 5 and 10% of the business ownership in America today is female owned. I don't know how right that is. That's what I heard. Can't say that's correct or not. But I do know that it's very low. You know what I mean? Now, then we start going to an ethnic conversation, right? Then it's even lower. We do know that. I think it's, male, then women, then ethnic. And I could be wrong. I'm kind of guessing on that particularly. It could be actually not that. I do agree with you. Silicon Valley is they have an opportunity. What I hear is what you're saying is they have an opportunity to lead the world in leadership. They have an opportunity. They're not stepping up to that.
And when I'm saying diversity and inclusion, it's a huge thing with women. I mean, it's a huge thing with ethnicity. It's a huge thing with people from different backgrounds. It's a huge thing with immigrants. This is why, a lot of people have issues with different governments. The thing that a lot of people don't see, for example, someone like me that came from a foreign country, is there are many other things that you would go through, because you would not just look at diversity from your race. You look at diversity from your status as an immigrant or as a visa, and just there are many policies that affect you that might not be said in the mainstream. So those things, if they are infringed upon or they're made to work harder, you're like, wait, does that mean that I'm less of a person? I think we live in a very patriarchal world that doesn't seem to reward women as much as they should be, when women have the hardest job as being, especially moms, they have the hardest job as being the original CEO. I was raised by the strongest woman I know, and having to see what she had to go through, and have people in the world say that, the only successful people are, men that look like this, that to me is not an accurate representation. So what I'm fighting for is, that social justice element but there's equality and diversity accurately represented, and also the right stories being told, so that it's okay for anyone to say my hero is her, my hero is him, my hero is that. But that's what I mean by old model. That's not how the world has been. I know we all think we haven't really changed in how we thought, but we've done something wrong where we don't have as many women or as many minorities being represented, because it's not that they don't do anything. It's just that they're not represented or told about.
Not, well, yeah, absolutely. And there's a difference between how people buy and think and feel, right? That hasn't altered on storytelling and how we learn. And that's my argument with that. We have diversified in women and us, as well as in all different cultures, right? Is available to us to be able to grow and what I call pull people up, right? Now, what I do here, and I can see where you're coming from on the Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is a leading edge on the world stage. It's a world stage, and people look at Silicon Valley from a world stage. And they do have an opportunity to be on the cutting edge of not only technology, but also on culture diversity and leadership.
Yeah.
They do have that. They do have that. I'm not sure maybe they are aware of that. I have no idea. I think that's what I hear is I'm going to use the word fight or stand for, is to help them be aware that they have an opportunity to be on the cutting edge of culture diversity.
No, they are aware. I mean, there are constant reports that are being, and to their end, they've made efforts to highlight some of these things. But I think the first step is people just being aware, and then people actually saying, okay, this is true. I acknowledge that there's a problem. Let's do something about that.
Be the boss of your life. You're listening to The Win with Heather Havenwood. Our whole world revolves around our smartphones now. They say we look at our phones on an average of 150 times a day or more. Look, if you're a small business and want to grow, you need to reach people where they're looking the most. Their smartphones. So text the word START to 72,000 now to learn more from our friends at Mobit, or go to heatherhavenwood.com/Mobit. Again, text the word START to 72,000 now. Be the boss of your life. You're listening to The Win with Heather Havenwood.
I noticed sometimes, though, there's a lot of pushback where some people this are trigger words that I've noticed when I'm talking to people from different races. They hate the word privilege, like if you say white privilege, or like you not saying any, silence is violence. They're like, wait, why? So I have to say something? Or they hate the fact that to them, they can count their Black or Hispanic friends, and all of a sudden that means that they're racist. So people think you're attacking them and calling them racist. And the counter to that is no one is saying you're racist, but the fact that
You're not, but there is people saying.
No, yeah, but this is what we always say, right? So if someone says you're racist, but that doesn't mean that the problem isn't there and we shouldn't do anything about it. Is it at that point, do we get to the point where you're offended by that you will now not do anything about it, or you would work to fix that, to say, okay, I'm not, and I hate that you think like that I am, but at the same time I recognize that there's a problem and we must do something about it, because I don't think you're racist, for example, and I'm sure you've probably gotten that. But if someone calls you racist, that doesn't make the problem go away all of a sudden. It just, it's still there. We shouldn't shut down.
No, of course not. I mean, of course not. But and I've never been called a racist. I just hear. I mean, personally, I haven't been called that. Be it first. If maybe someone has, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Maybe someone has. I don't go out of my way to not do that. But there is a piece of I would say the white culture that every time there's an argument, right, or a disagreement with anyone that's not white, it's almost like don't want to do that because there's a fear of being called racist. So we're always in this fear of, versus like, no, I want to be, why can I not have an argument or a debate with you, right? I'm white, you're Black. Okay, we're having a debate doesn't mean just because I have a view, it means I'm racist. It just means I have a different view. It's just a debate, right?
Mm-hmm.
I like debate. Debate's good. Debate's fun. Doesn't have to go into fighting. Doesn't have to go into name calling. It's just a debate and a conversation to bring awareness. That's what a debate is designed for, right? So I think a lot of now I can say from a view of person who is, you know, Caucasian or white, is that there is a fear of like ever having a debate or ever speaking up because there's a fear of being called a racist, right? So they just kind of shut down because it's like, well, I don't want to go there because I might be called that thing called racism. And then I feel like I have to defend. And if I'm in defensive mode of like, I'm not a racist, it sounds like I'm a racist because I'm defending it. You know what I mean? So, but I do I like your answer. Like, look, I'm not. I'm sorry you think that way. And like, maybe there's something to be said here. Talk about what's going on. What's the real problem? You know, that education piece. So, are you in universities a lot? Are you in current?
Yeah. No, I'm in universities, and in my favorite conversations are the ones like we had on my podcast and this, because a lot of minorities and a lot of women, and they know what the problem is. They experience it every day. This is a day-to-day thing. This is more of getting other people. It's a lot of white people who might have sheltered themselves because of what you said, right? But the idea of being called a racist is if someone calls you racist, that's a very, very heavy accusation. So some people just don't, they hate being called that. But my always argument to that is we've lived such a politically correct environment that the problem that we have right now is because people haven't been saying all these things they've thought, or people haven't had the conversation enough to say, okay, thank you for educating me on that. I always thought this growing up. This is how I was always feeling. But now that I voiced it out and you didn't lash out on my person, you just lashed out on my argument, I can now be educated on that. And I think that takes away such a great opportunity to be educated, because there's so many stereotypes and positions that need to be corrected, but people don't have those conversations because we don't have enough open environments to create these dialogues. So at universities, when you were asking, those are the type of environments that I create, where you have someone from a completely different background coming in to say, I've had people say, I think, a lot of Black teenagers, women are just predispositioned to violence and they always fight. And it's because of what they saw on worldstar.com. But these are real. This was not, no one was judging anyone here, but this is how we're talking. But these things were just shared by a lot of people. And I'm like, and I asked them, do you see how dangerous it is if you start keeping that in and you grow up and you become the one to hire people? You just subconsciously are not going to be the one that's going to hire them because you've already thought this. But they've never had the opportunity to express that. And on the other end, there's a lot of anger, right? Because they've been like, I think people make the mistake of thinking, you had a Black president, everything is okay. But having a Black president doesn't erase anything. It just means there's a lot more work to be done. People forget that it was just 50 years ago that Jim Crow laws literally said there's basically colored bathrooms and white bathrooms. And those systems in place had people in different backgrounds going to less schools there, had less funds, and they didn't have access to the same jobs.
Well, yes, okay, I get that. However, I will say,
I know you get. I'm not talking. I'm not saying like you.
We gotta move forward. Why keep bringing it? God, if that was 50 years ago, thank God it was 50 years ago. It wasn't 20 years ago. Let's make it 60 years. It's
a generation. It's not gone away.
It's starting a conversation. It's more and more going to the future. You got to create a new possibility and create a new future if you're going to let go of the past. You got to be open to change on both sides of the aisle, as they call it in politics.
No, but Heather, do you see how that if you have someone that grew up in there and then they raise someone else, they're still poor because the cycle is still there. So it's not like
still there.
It's not like it's not like this is just like we have people old enough to tell you about those times. It's not like that happened.
Of course.
So it's not. They don't have all of a sudden the resources.
World War II is not here anymore either. We're not going to keep bringing up World War II.
It's so I don't know how to explain this, but
I understand. Look, I have a question for you. Let's stop there. I really have a question for you on something else. Okay, let's turn to So Berkeley, I'm really curious what you thought about what happened with. Recently, I think it was like a week ago at Berkeley, and Milo was there, and the big breakout. What do you think about that? Because you're in that world every day. I'm not. I have probably not touched a campus in like years, unless I drive through University of Texas on accident. What do you think of that? Was that something that you were surprised that Berkeley, the students were so destructive to their own campus? Did you find that surprising, or like, oh, of course? Or what do you think?
Oh, nothing surprises me anymore. I haven't been. I mean. The election once the election, I'm not surprised by anything. I think people are angry right now, and a lot of people don't know how to channel it. It's coming out in all forms. It's coming out in social media rants. It's coming out in vandalization. It's coming out in rallies. It's coming out. I'm just
So are you saying you condone that kind of behavior from a student perspective if you were a consultant for them?
I'm not. No. I said I'm not surprised by any form of action taken care. My form of education is always to create environments that are open dialogue. I've never, been a proponent or supporter of violent behavior. But my response was saying I'm not surprised with that because I've seen it on both sides. I went to Minnesota to speak at the University of St. Paul the day after Trump won, and I'm not going to say the word here, but the N word was sprayed on campus, and it was all over campus. And all of a sudden, people were like saying, "Yeah, I've seen it on both sides," and people were doing that. So I'm not a condone. I don't condone any of that. I'm just saying I'm not surprised by that. I think what we need to do with our anger is channel it towards meaningful discussions. You and I, this is the second meaningful discussion we've had where it was interesting to me, the response that you had on my show when I asked you who you looked up to at the moment. You paused and you made a joke. It was a joke. I know it was, you didn't actually think I was going to hang up, but you're like, oh, I'm sure you're going to hang up now and lose that. But that's a way we now think because we get defensive initially first because like, oh, if I say this, someone else is going to think something and then, but we have to get past that.
Sensitive to...
Yeah.
Because I've been called all kinds of names because I'm a Trump supporter. And I think it's ridiculous. But, I'm clear about that some people really don't like it. If someone says to me they're a Hillary supporter, I'm like, okay. You know what I mean? I don't have this like trigger of like, wah! Even this is before the election. I just go, okay, well, that's your view. I don't have that trigger, but I'm also aware other people may or may not. And I don't know. There's kind of this edge, but I'm curious on the Berkeley thing. Because the reason I'm asking a little more on the question is you are in that environment week in, week out at least. All right. That's more than me. So Are you finding that kind of behavior is all across the country currently on university? Or was that an isolated incident?
I wouldn't say it's, it's happening, in a few colleges. I don't think it's the majority of the campuses. I wouldn't say it's majority. I would say it's happening.
Why do the current generation that's sitting in college right now, why do they feel that is appropriate on some level? I can't imagine that happening.
But it's not a current generation thing. This is not like, okay, this is one that okay, let me ask this question. Are you saying this is a millennial thing?
The anger.
Because it's not a millennial thing. I've seen rallies and stuff from generations before.
Yeah, that's always been, of course. It's always been rallies and universities designed for that, the free speech. Yeah. But the destruction piece, the destruction piece is the piece that I think has gone like, whoa, there's having a voice and First Amendment and having marches and all that and really getting your voice out. And then there's like destroying your own property. That's where I'm like, what?
But then again, that's not this. It's not just this generation. I think people were looting in the 60s and breaking and vandalizing campuses, or 50s, 40s. Even when America was first founded.
So your response to that is to get defensive and say other people have done it?
No, that's not defensive.
When I was in college, that didn't happen. In the 90s?
No. See, my only response to that is that this is not a millennial type of thing. And I think that over generations, people have reacted out of anger to things that they didn't like from the government or from certain policies this way. So this is more of a human question and a psychology question. Mm-hmm. The fact that people think vandalizing their own property is a good thing is not something that I would say that I'm necessarily qualified to answer. I would say, if you look it up, I don't know why a lot of people have done that. My way of thinking is not, I'm more of a guy that educates and seeks to have the uncomfortable discussion and say, I'm going to go into, like, I'm not a Trump supporter. Everybody knows that. But I'm going to go into an environment and have the conversation, come out alive, and we'll both have a conversation. I'm not going to...
piece, I'm going to wrap up with this because we have to go. But that was a piece that's frustrating for me. So like what you just said, you're willing to have those conversations. You're willing to go out there, speak on your platform, and have this conversation, which I absolutely love, and I completely think you should. Okay?
Yeah.
That's what Milo was doing. And he got shut down. He wasn't even allowed to have that conversation. And like him or not, agree with him or not, that's not the point. The point is he wasn't allowed to even have the conversation or even allowed to have the discussion. or even allowed to open people's minds or close them down, whatever. That's where I disagree with that whole Berkeley thing. It's like, if you want to have the riot because you don't like something he said, you're right. But when you shut down somebody and you haven't even heard them yet, I think that's a breakdown. That's a breakdown. And then there's no freedom to actually have the discussion. They're shutting down the conversation before it starts.
No, I get you. I get what you're saying. I think with Milo's case, a lot of what he said is incited violence. And I think an education system is probably thinking, I don't want that on my campus. If you look at other places that Milo's been on both ends, whether it's the alt-right or the anti-alt-right, they've been out there on campus just spewing this hatred. Look at what he did to the Saturday Night Live lady. All out attack. I mean, that is not justified on any level. Whether you're creating an open environment, that's just bullying. I mean, I can see how and first of all, it's a dean that will make that decision. It's not a millennial. I can see how they would say, okay, we don't want that on my campus because you're going to just create this divisive environment that I don't want to have on my campus. Sure. I mean, on that end, I can see that. That to me moves beyond a freedom of speech thing where it's a pattern of behavior. But that's just my opinion. That's just my opinion.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, that's what we're just having a conversation. Okay, great. Well, I'm going to wrap it up. Where can people find you and opt in and email you? Where can they find you?
They can find me on tyrockson.com. It's TAYOROCKSON.com. And I'm at Tyrockson on all social media platforms.
Awesome. Okay. Always a great discussion with you. It's like fiery.
Well, thank you for having me on. I know I agree. I say the same thing about you. So it's, there's fire and I'm always ready. So
yeah, you're great. And I thank you for having the debate. Some people thinking you guys are fighting. We're not fighting. It's a debate. By the way, I love debate and I love the fact that I could do that with you. It's like a little bit like a sparring. So I absolutely love that. So, all right, everyone, this is Heather Havenwood with The Win. You can check us out at heatherhavenwood.com. You know, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Google Play, all kinds of great places. Go check us out. See you soon.
Thank you for listening to The Win with Heather Havenwood. Interested in coaching with Heather? Go to heatherhavenwood.com and sign up for a business discovery consultation. Here is your free gift for listening. Get 3 audio chapters of Heather's book, Sexy Boss, How Women Empowerment is Changing the Rulebook, when you text the word sexy to 72000. Again, text the word sexy, that is SEXY, to 72000. And receive your 3 audiobook chapters. Number is good only in North America. This is a Sexy Boss Wrap. This podcast is a copyright of Havenwood Worldwide, LLC.